Welcome back to Inside the System. I'm Jazmin Logan, and I'm joined by Emeritus Political Science Professor Dr. David Kanervo. Today we'll be covering news in American politics relating to the recent lapse in SNAP benefits, an Illinois ICE facility alleged inhumane conditions, and the November 4th election day. So stay tuned. The ongoing government shutdown isn't just the longest in American history, it's likely the most damaging too. The 2018 to 2019 shutdown, previously the longest on record at 35 days, was only a partial shutdown. Data from Goldman Sachs shows the current shutdown has derailed 100% of appropriations. Correspondent Julia Benbrook reports from the White House as the lapse in funding continues.
We are now in the longest government shutdown on record, and neither party wants to be blamed for the lapse in funding as Americans feel the impact. Roughly 1.4 million federal employees have not been paid, even as many are still working. Food stamp benefits are on hold for millions, and policymakers are in the dark about the U.S. economy as the release of government data has been stalled. President Donald Trump at least partially blamed the shutdown for GOP election day losses. Writing on social media, Trump wasn't on the ballot and shutdown were the two reasons that Republicans lost elections tonight. The next morning, he hosted Republican senators at the White House and publicly admitted he believes the impasse is hurting his party.
I thought we'd have a discussion after the press leaves about what last night represented and what we should do about it, and also about the shutdown and how that relates to last night. I think if you read the pollsters, the shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans.
The main sticking points of the shutdown remain the same. Republicans are pushing for essentially an extension of current funding levels on a short-term basis, and Democrats want to extend enhanced Obamacare subsidies set to expire at the end of the year. Now, we are hearing from two Democratic sources that about a dozen Senate Democrats have privately signaled that they might be willing to support a stopgap funding deal to reopen the government in exchange for a future vote on health care. Negotiations are still ongoing. At the White House, I'm Julia Benbrook.
And while lawmakers in Washington continue to debate a funding deal, the effects are already being felt here at home. On behalf of Clarksville Now, I spoke with several local food pantries like Lowe's and Bish's, who say they've seen a surge in demand since SNAP benefits were disrupted. Volunteers say they're serving more families each week and donations are struggling to keep up. Dr. Kanervo, when we see shutdowns stall programs like SNAP, who ultimately is responsible? Is it Congress, the president, or both?
Well, I think it's both, though certainly Congress has responsibility for passing laws, passing the appropriations for government to operate. So in some ways it starts with them, but at the same time, in this case, Republicans are so willing to listen to Trump's orders and demands that Trump has to bear some responsibility, I think, as well, in that he has told the Republican members of Congress not to talk to the Democrats, not to negotiate, not to compromise. And so when that happens, of course, the president has got to bear some of the responsibility as well. But ultimately, members of Congress, it seems to me, can come together behind the scenes. They can work out differences and compromise, and that ultimately is what's going to have to take place. Yes,
and why do we seem to have these shutdowns more often now?
Well, we have had more shutdowns recently, if you go back over the last 10, 20 years, than we did earlier in our history. And the reason for that, I think, is because of the very strong and divided feelings that we have within the country and within government right now. members of the Republican and Democratic parties are at each other's throats, so to speak, and as a result, they're not as willing to compromise as perhaps they were 50 or 60 years ago.
Very true, but do you think politicians use shutdowns as leverage too often without fully considering the real-world consequences for working families?
Well, I think they do, and unfortunately for the people who suffer, their suffering and their consequences are part of the leverage that occurs. Obviously, I think a lot of people in the country feel very badly for the SNAP recipients who aren't receiving their benefits. They feel very bad for those who are not receiving their salaries. It's disorienting to those people who have to somehow make their lives work without that money. But at the same time, it's a great deal of inconvenience for many of the rest of us as well, such as the airlines, for example, where we're starting to see a lot of cancellations because of the controllers calling in sick. So it is very much a piece of leverage, and it's a decision, a conscious decision that the members of Congress have to make. Are they willing to do the shutdown knowing that it's going to hurt a lot of people, or do they decide to give in? In this case, the Democrats have believed that the loss of the subsidies for the CARE Act, in which people are going to lose their health insurance, that the loss of health insurance to a lot of citizens, they think is going to be worth the shutdown, and to try to prevent that from happening. And of course, I think we saw that Tuesday in the election, in that Democrats certainly succeeded much more than Republicans did.
Yes, and that is true, but we're also seeing with the shutdown, like here in Clarksville, we know that it's already starting to affect the local food pantries and soup kitchens who are seeing that increased demand due to food insecurity with that delay in SNAP benefits.
Well, that's certainly true, and it is, I think, a matter of many people in the community and around the country stepping up and providing help to the food pantries. We've seen that happen also at the state level with governors. Governor Lee has released some state money here in Tennessee to provide help to the food pantries. In Illinois, somewhat similar actions have been taken by Governor Pritzker. And so we are seeing governors step in where the federal government has failed.
Thankfully.
Yes.
But after decades of seeing how shutdowns hurt both the economy and people, do you think there's a realistic way to reform the budget process so government services aren't held hostage during political standoffs?
I don't think there's any kind of magic bullet that's going to help particularly. We have gone through budget reforms over the years, trying to help the budget process to complete itself on time, to get the work done. And despite the reforms that have occurred over the last 50 years or so, the fact still remains that it doesn't work because the people themselves are not willing to compromise and bring a resolution to the problem.
And as of right now, there is still no end in sight for the current government shutdown. So what do you recommend people do during this time of uncertainty?
Well, it's a matter of the recipients who are not receiving their money, hopefully getting some help from family members, other people in the community, through the food banks. And it's up to the rest of us, I think, to try to put pressure on our representatives to reach a reasonable compromise, but also to provide some help out of our own pocketbooks, those of us who have food, shelter, who are doing reasonably well, have some obligation, I think, to provide some help to those who are not doing so well.
Yes, sir, I agree. And these food banks have said anything helps. We'll be right back after this short break to discuss the recent controversy with the ICE facility in Illinois.
My Shiro doesn't always wear a cape, but she always has time for a hug, a smile, for going the extra mile. My Shiro stretches every dollar, puts in long hours, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. When you're ready to retire, we want you to be able to enjoy it. It's time to start saving now. A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today. Visit aceyourretirement.org/Shiro.
Tensions are rising in Broadview, Illinois, where protesters and local residents clashed at a heated village meeting over the federal ICE facility there. The controversy comes ahead of a major court hearing that could determine whether the facility remains open or is shut down for inhumane conditions. Marissa Sulek reports.
Tonight, the dozens of people who came to the Broadview Village meeting were told to leave after they spoke out of turn. Many protesters outside the Broadview facility attended and were upset a tent they had up there for supplies was taken down by the village.
And then you started firing chemicals at us. You left us defenseless, and then you opened fire. Like cowards.
People who live and work in the village quickly fired back.
None of you people live here in the village of Broadview, but yet you're going to demand rights for your First Amendment rights contrary to my rights.
But as Mayor Katrina Thompson was making her remarks at the end, she told everyone to leave after she says people continued to talk over her. The Broadview ICE Processing Center, many at the meeting have been protesting outside of for weeks, is the point of contention during a federal court hearing tomorrow. That will focus on the conditions inside the brick building.
If the judge finds that this is not a humane place, it's inhumane, he has the power to actually shut it down.
CBS News Chicago legal analyst Irv Miller says the federal judge has all day tomorrow to listen to live testimony. That includes 2 people recently detained who will be brought back to testify. Irv says the judge has the power to stop all immigration enforcement on Chicago area streets if he sees fit.
Homeland Security would have no place to process these detainees. So I'm sure tonight they're trying to see if, just in case they lose, if there's any alternative places that they could do processing of the people that they're detaining.
Dr. Kanervo, when a federal facility like this ICE Center faces allegations of inhumane treatment, how much authority do local governments or federal judges actually have to intervene?
Well, local governments, of course, can file suit in federal courts to try to resolve the problem. The judges themselves, once they receive the suit, have both parties come before them to discuss the situation, and judges then have the option of fining government facilities for inhumane treatment if that's what the court decides is in fact happening. And in some cases order a shutdown. You may remember the alligator Alcatraz in Florida that was so well publicized. It eventually was shut down because of complaints about inhumane treatment there as well. And so those things can happen if the people who are running the facility don't follow the court order and either clean it up or shut it down. They, as I said, can be fined or held in contempt of the court. which could result in a jail sentence for those who are in charge of the facility. So there are some things that can be done, but ultimately, of course, a court does not implement its own decisions. It relies on others to implement them. And so the federal government has to be willing to go along and recognize the court's order as valid and be willing to implement it. If not, of course, then not much is going to happen.
Yes, and we're already seeing the local impact in Broadview right now. We just saw with the protesters and residents, there has been a big clash over this issue. How do you think what do you think this tells us about the divide in terms of immigration?
Well, of course, part of the divide is partisan in that we know that the Republican Party, and specifically Trump as the head of the party, has been very vocal about immigration, that he wants immigration slowed down, that he wants to get rid of all illegal immigrants, regardless of the situation, regardless of who they are, how long they have been here. And one of the other things, unfortunately, that Trump seems to have done is to put more pressure and harsher treatment on Democratic states and Democratic-led cities, such as Chicago and Illinois. And so that in itself is a problem, I think, because it's not providing equal treatment if you are treating some people harsher than others. And that's a constitutional violation. 14th Amendment says people are to be treated equally in this country. We have equal protection under the law. And if that's not being followed, that's certainly unfair. And it's up then to the courts to deal with that and find some resolution.
Very true. And we're seeing some Americans are having some conflict when it comes to the topic of immigration. Do you think political leaders are doing enough to bridge this divide?
Well, I don't know that they are, or that they really have much ability to do that. Immigration, of course, is federal law, and as federal law, it's up to the president and his administration, and in this case, the immigration enforcement people, ICE, who are going to be primarily responsible for taking care of it. It's up to state and local governments then to either complain or not about the treatment of the people in that facility. We know that illegal immigration has been a problem, but at the same time, we also know that immigrants in this country have been very important parts of our society. Whether they are legal or illegal, they have contributed in many important ways to our society, providing services that certainly Americans would not provide, as in the agricultural area, as in some of the less desirable places to work, such as some of the sweatshops that used to exist, but also the factories that deal with poultry and animal carcasses. Those things are not nice places to work, but immigrants are willing to do it, and we should thank them for that.
Yes, and if the courts were to order the Broadview facility to shut down or limit operations, if this treatment is found to be true, could that set a precedent for other immigration centers?
Well, it certainly could. I think you could argue perhaps that Alcatraz being shut down was a precedent, maybe for the one in Chicago. At the same time, though, because they are in different places in different states, they're treated pretty much individually. And so it means then that for every holding facility that's considered to be unreasonably poor quality, poor condition, then that means someone in that area has to go to court and start a new case. And of course that takes time, it takes resources to do that. Unfortunately, they're all judged individually, and so if Chicago's facility is cleaned up or shut down, it's not necessarily going to mean that one in Denver or one in Montana will be.
Yes, very true. And so I guess we'll just have to see how the judge rules with this Broadview, Illinois case.
Right.
We'll be right back after this short break to discuss what happened this past election day, so stay tuned.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzz and overshared again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
That's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Thanks for sticking around. Election Day 2025 may not have had President Trump on the ballot, but his influence is still shaping races across the country. From governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey to local contests in New York City and a high-stakes congressional vote in California, candidates are tying themselves or distancing themselves from the former president to win over votes. Karen Kafa is in Washington with a look at Tuesday's key votes.
Governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey, the mayor's race in New York City, and a California vote that will tee up next year's high-stakes congressional elections headline Election Day 2025. With a large population of federal workers impacted by the Trump administration's downsizing of the government workforce and the current shutdown, Democratic Virginia candidate for governor and former Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger has tied Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears to President Donald Trump and his policies to try to boost her campaign. In New Jersey, Republican gubernatorial candidate Jack Ciattarelli, who was endorsed by Trump, has framed himself as a Jersey guy while trying to cast his opponent, Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, who moved to the Garden State after her Navy career, as an outsider. And in New York City, Trump urged voters to support former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo over Democratic nominee Zoran Mamdani. Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, has zeroed in on the cost of living in the city, which has resonated especially with young and social media savvy voters. Cuomo, who lost to Mamdani in the Democratic primary and is running as an independent, has argued Mamdani, a 34-year-old state assemblyman, is too inexperienced. And in California, voters are considering a plan backed by Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom to reshape the state's congressional map to improve Democrats' chances of winning 5 GOP-held seats in next year's midterms. It's designed to counter a plan signed into law by Texas Governor Greg Abbott that aims to help Republicans win 5 House seats there. Of course, those 2026 midterm elections are still a full year away, but both parties will be looking for insights into how to turn out voters in their favor when control of Congress is up for grabs next November. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
Even when a former president isn't on the ballot, candidates are still using their support or opposition as a campaign tool. Dr. Kanervo, how significant is this in shaping voter decisions and election outcomes?
Well, it's a very interesting outcome, really, because I guess one of the ironies for this year particularly is that a lot of cities and states purposely place their elections for their local and state officers in off years meaning when we're not electing a president. And the purpose for doing that is to try to separate national issues, presidential issues, from state and local issues in the campaigns. Obviously that didn't work so well this year, that because of the very strong feelings that a lot of people have, both for and against President Trump, that has led to what I would call a spillover into the local and state campaigns as well, in which, while Trump is not on the ballot, Trump is still in most people's minds because of his strong personality, his strong rhetoric. People see him as the leader, very much the leader of the Republican Party, and that so many of the Republicans, the so-called macro Republicans, are right there in lockstep with the president, that they see Republicans at any level essentially being like Trump, supporting Trump, and so what Trump wants is going to be, in some ways, on the ballot for these Republicans, despite their attempts maybe to separate themselves a little bit from him. And so, for better or for worse, the election a couple of days ago was one in which the president, whether he claims to have been on the ballot or not, he wasn't obviously literally, but I think he was certainly figuratively, in that his popularity, public opinion about him certainly had a place in how people voted. And we saw, of course, that the Democrats did very well.
Yes, and Trump himself said that the reason why the GOP took a hit this past election day is because his name wasn't on the ballot and because of the recent government shutdown.
Right. He's not, of course, willing to take any responsibility for the outcome of the election. It's always someone else's fault. And despite that, I would argue that he was on the ballot, again, figuratively, and certainly in people's minds when it came to the Republican Party, the MAGA part of the Republican Party, and how people were going to vote based on what's happening in this country right now. There are a lot of things going on with inflation and so on that people are tired of and want to see a change.
Yes, and with races ranging from local mayoral contests to statewide governorships, how do national figures like Trump and situations like the shutdown impact voter priorities in these local elections?
Well, of course, the primary priority for most people, I think, and what the polls continually show, is the economy. We know that when people go to the grocery store, they are upset when prices go up. We know that when they have a hard time affording an apartment or a house, that they're upset and they blame the president and the federal government to a great degree. Biden faced that when he lost in 2024, with the inflation being blamed on him. And we're seeing that Trump's failure to really improve the economy substantially is now something he's owning.
Yes, and I'm interested to see how all of this plays a role in the upcoming District 7 election on December 2nd. Well, that wraps up this week's edition of Inside the System. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more political coverage. Don't forget, early voting for the District 7 election starts next Wednesday on November 12th and runs through the 26th. Stay informed and see you next edition.